May I, first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak. I feel humble and honored. I'm aware that I'm doing so in the presence of this very distinguished audience. I make my contribution by the men in Indian politics who I have admired most, Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Friends, to some of us, Baba Saheb has been a lesson in the history of India's struggle for freedom. To others, he has been a great scholar who helped shape India's constitution. His career had many facets. It depends on where you are and where you stood in time. Some remember him, and we heard this. We see the evidence of it, as a prominent jurist. Some remember him as a renowned economist, not forgetting his political credential encompassing revolutionary social reforms. But you know, there is one very interesting thing. No matter which facet you look at, no matter which direction you come from, we are all agreed that he was a man who shaped India's destiny that has stood the test of time. Our democracy is that much richer because of the foresight of leaders like Baba Saheb Ambedkar. We have a long way to go before respect and dignity becomes part of our daily lives. He has given us direction towards this end. It is now time for us to deliver. We have great challenges to face. Ingrained in some of these our lives are the values which at one time were foreign to us. It was never part of our development, no matter which part of the history you look at it. Let me give you an example. Some of the factors that has withheld our progress. To understand Dr. Ambedkar, we must start with the British Empire, which fragmented pre-independent India. The starting point for us is to look at how the feudal India of 1947, steeped in the history of caste warfare, poverty, and famine, produced an agenda where justice, liberty, and peace became the cornerstone of his constitution. The credit must go to Baba Saheb Ambedkar. So a word about the constitution, well referred by the previous speaker from the LSE, adopted by the country on 26 November 1949. Democracy is sustained by the rule of law. The Constitution is the supreme law of India, and it is a living document. The preamble is a brief introduction that sets out our guiding purposes and principles. And let me pull out some of the striking features of this important document. India is a secular democratic republic which secures 4 basic principles for all its citizens. These are justice, explained by social, economic, and political matters; liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship; equality of status and opportunity for all its citizens; and most important of all, fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. How would I define equality? Something that we crave for, something we demand for a right, something that is lacking in the way our lives are developed. When I was asked how do I define equality, I said that this is best explained by telling you what is not equality. And I'm going to cite a little poem with a real meaning of what it is all about. And this is something somebody sent me by email, and the title of this poem I don't sing, so don't worry. I don't want you to empty the hall. The title is A Princess for the 21st Century. And it starts like this. Once upon a time, in a land far away, a beautiful, independent, self-assured princess happened upon a frog as she sat contemplating issues on the shores of a beautiful pond in a meadow near her castle. So what does the frog do? The frog hopped onto the princess's lap and said, "Elegant lady, I was once a handsome prince until an evil witch which cast a spell on me. One kiss from you, from the princess, however, and I will turn back into the handsome young prince that I am." And now comes the concept of equality as far as the prince was concerned. He said then, the frog said, "And then, my sweet," to the princess, "my sweet, we can marry and set up housekeeping in your castle with my mother, where you can prepare my meals." Then he goes further, "Clean my clothes, bear my children, and forever feel grateful and happy in doing so." That night, as the princess dined on a rarest but lightly salted frog legs, seasoned in white wine and onion and in cream sauce, she chuckled and said softly to herself, "I don't bloody well think so." Thank you.
And I now request Acting High Commissioner to kindly unveil a copy. Mr. Upstairs here. Anniversary of Dr. Ambedkar. And this is a message from none other than the Queen of the United Kingdom. The souvenir has a message from Her Majesty the Queen, and I now read it out. Quote, "I thank you for the kind letter sent on behalf of the Ambedkar Mission Society on the occasion of 125th anniversary of the birth of Dr. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar, which is to be marked with a series of events in Bedford. Her Majesty was interested to learn of Dr. Ambedkar's contribution to the social reform in India and worldwide. The Queen appreciates your thoughtfulness in writing as you did, and in return sends her warm and good wishes to all concerned." Signed. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Lord Dorothea talked about many things, and one thing, another feather in the cap was that Dr. Saab also championed the cause of women's rights. And few of his findings actually went on to contribute on the inheritance and the equal rights for women. And the Hindu Marriage Act, when it was approved, had several such contributions from Dr. Ambedkar. So this was not one contribution limiting only to political philosophy or economist or jurist, but many more. I now have the privilege of requesting Madam Santosh Das, President of FABO, to share her thoughts on this occasion.
Your Jai Bim, Your Excellency, the Deputy High Commissioner, Lord Dalakir, Venerable Bunty, Worshipful Thormayers, distinguished guests and friends, congratulations on the 125th birth anniversary of our Baba Sahib, Dr. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar. Today, like previous years, we've had a succession of speakers talking about Dr. Ambedkar's wonderful life and his struggle and the works and his accomplishments. And I don't need to repeat those, and we've had a very good keynote address from Lord Dalakir. This morning we celebrated, as Dr. Paul said, we had a first formal event at the Ambedkar House in Hampstead in North London. Now this house was held in extraordinary significance for the Ambedkarite and human rights movements. And that is why in September, when it came on the market, the Federation of Ambedkarites and Buddhist Organizations UK put forward a proposal to the government of Maharashtra. And that proposal was to purchase the property with government funding and turn it into a working memorial to Dr. Ambedkar in London. And there were many delays and many obstacles in our way, and seemingly we were undaunted. We persevered. It's what Dr. Ambedkar, our Baba Sahib, would have expected. Persevere and change will come. And we don't depend on deities to remove obstacles for us. Now, nearly 20 months later, we had our first opportunity to pay homage to Baba Sahib in that very house. And the movement must extend its personal thanks and commitment and support of one man. And he is Mr. Badoleji, the Minister for Social Welfare in the government of Maharashtra. The Dr. Ambedkar House is within walking distance of the London School of Economics, Gray's Inn, the British Library, Parliament, and never forget Primrose Hill. And Primrose Hill granted him a panorama of London life, literally and figuratively speaking. And during his time in the house, he was exposed to, amongst other things, Western liberalism, history, and philosophy. In relative peace, the bookworm that he was read extensively, and his reading diet included the writings of such social and political thinkers as Voltaire, John Dewey, Lord Acton. I mean, Lord Acton was the one who wrote, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." And William Morris, of course, and the Putney debates. And this period helped Dr. Ambedkar evolve into the remarkable independent thinker he became. And of course, we've heard about his theses, The Problem of the Rupee and its origin and its solution. That grew its roots in Hampstead, in that house. And the work is still relevant today as it was then, and we've heard about the Reserve Bank and so on. Now, on his return to India, Dr. Ambedkar said that he had acquired a deep appreciation of the all-round development of society. He foresaw how he wouldn't be able to solve all of the problems of the untouchables in India, and how loathsome is that word, untouchable. But he committed to highlighting their plight on an international platform. And he did this first by involving himself in the round table discussions in London in 1930 onwards. And there he represented the depressed classes, as they were called then. And later on, he made links with the Black Civil Rights Movement in the lead up to the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And he stressed the similarities of their plight in the United States to that of the Dalits in India. And he recognized the common ground of being denied rights to education and being deprived of religious and political power. And that was far-seeing. And today, there's a tendency for lazy journalism and politicians to pigeonhole Dr. Ambedkar as exclusively a leader of the so-called untouchables. He was never a one-trick pony. We need to change that perception and myth, and I think the events today in the House of Lords and the speeches by our eminent guests here, are helping change that perception and the myth. And Dr. Ambedkar was one of the finest academics of his generation, a prolific writer, a social reformer, an outstanding economist, an empowerer of women in India, and Mr. Singh was just talking about the Hindu Code Bill, and a nation builder. Lord Dalakia talked about Dr. Ambedkar being a nation builder. India was very important to Dr. Ambedkar, and he wanted it to be an India that was good for all of its citizens, including the depressed classes. And his initiatives as India's Labour Minister led to an 8-hour working day down from 14 hours a day. Whether that happened in practice, the principles of an 8-hour day, is quite remarkable in that time, in the early 50s. And he was instrumental in the introduction of the Minimum Wage Act, also as a Labour minister. And these policies are that trade unions here in the UK would have been proud of. And the Ambedkar House will now give us the opportunity to educate more people about Dr. Ambedkar's many, many great achievements. And his achievements remain as relevant as they were during his lifetime. Baba Sahib died in 1956. The cause never did. This year marks 80 years since Dr. Ambedkar published his essay, The Annihilation of Caste. And the messages in that speech had a relevance, punch, and forcefulness then. Annihilation of caste is Ambedkar's unapologetic statement of the truth, is what is caste and what caste means for those forever exiled, rebirth included. He himself was so-called low caste by birth, and he knew caste and its impacts. Now, the caste system, no matter what people say, is still strong in India and wherever there's a South Asian diaspora. And caste discrimination and untouchability belights millions of lives. And that would be for the late PhD student Rohit Vamala's, or victims of employment-based caste discrimination here in the UK. And those who speak so wonderfully in praise of Dr. Ambedkar, but who believe that it's okay to resist any form of legal redress when it comes to tackling the injustices of caste-based discrimination, wherever it takes place in India or in the UK here. Here in the UK, the lobby against the caste discrimination equality legislation approved by Parliament in April 2013, has been working behind the scenes. And they're scaremongering that the law, when implemented, will institutionalize caste. But at the same time, hereditary caste practices and the laws of Manu are part of textbooks on Hinduism in British schools. Nothing is done to remove those. Misinformation, sadly, rules. So this year, I'd like to end by saying that this is the 125th birth anniversary of our Baba Sahib. We must question and challenge injustices wherever they take place, and caste-based discrimination wherever that takes place, and remove it. And Dr. Ambedkar would expect nothing less from us. Jai Hind, thank you for listening to me.